Welcome and congratulations on your purchase of a Janome Skyline S3 from Ken's Sewing Center. We're going to go over a lot of the features and use of your S3. But first off, I'd like to point out that you do get an instruction book, which gives you all of this great valuable information on using the variety of accessories that came with your S3, and also goes over a lot of what we will be talking about today on how to utilize your new purchase. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is wind a bobbin. And so this is our bobbin, and Janome bobbins are class 15 bobbins, but they're slightly different. And how you're going to know they are slightly different is because on the inside post of your bobbin is the letter J, J for Janome. What's important about this letter J, even though it's a class 15 bobbin, and not all class 15 bobbins are the same height or diameter, believe it or not, but the J tells you that it was made for our Janome machines. The difference is the material it was made with. It has some rubber incorporated in the material so that as you are using your bobbin, it winds off and spins easily without damaging or destroying your bobbin case that is in there. So to wind a bobbin, we of course going to put it on the bobbin winder. And when you put this on the bobbin winder, you're going to put that on and then spin it until it clicks. Okay. Sometimes you have to go further than you think. Sometimes you'll go, okay, I went around once already. Just keep spinning it until it clicks. So it is now locked onto your bobbin winder. We're going to take our spool of thread and of course put it on the spool pin up here. There are some numbering guides that help you to know how to thread this, how to put your thread while you're winding your bobbin. And there are dotted lines that show you to come back here behind this little piece that has a bobbin printed on it, back toward the lid and over to your bobbin winder. And then when you go to use your bobbin winder, you're going to have about 12 inches of thread off to your right. You're going to wrap this around the top of this bobbin. And what you're going to notice with respect to the bobbin winder is right at the base of where your bobbin is, there's a gray disc that has 3 slots in it. Those 3 slots are thread cutters. So after you've wound it a number of times, you can now take that thread tail, put it under that slot, and it will cut that thread tail for you. We're going to engage the bobbin winder by pushing that to the right. And now we're simply going to step on our foot control and let it wind. You, of course, can stop winding at any point along the way. I was using the foot control, but you'll also notice that you have a start-stop button. You can sew and you can wind a bobbin with your start-stop button. The only thing is that you need to physically unplug your foot control from your S3. So when you're done winding your bobbin, just pop this back to your left, and there's a convenient little thread cutter up here that will allow you to cut your thread. To put our bobbin into our S3, it's going to be in the shape of the letter P. So here's our thread tail off to the left side of our bobbin. If you were to pull the thread, you'll see that it turns counterclockwise as you're pulling the thread off. We have an easy set bobbin, so when we drop this in, when you put it under this metal piece that is actually kind of sticking up a little bit, when you put it under there, and bring that thread tail around number 1 and this number 2, which actually is a thread cutter. It will put that bobbin in the thread tension as needed. So just under this big metal piece that's kind of angled up slightly around number 1 and number 2, and number 2 is a thread cutter. And then we'll put our bobbin cover back on. Your bobbin cover has some convenient measuring marks. So it has 1/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and 5/8 of an inch for our garment sewers. And of course, in between 1/8 and 3/8 is 1/4, which will be convenient for our quilters. So we'll put our bobbin cover on. Now we're going to thread our S3. And once again, there are threading numbers that will take you. Steps 1 and 2 are the same steps that you would take if you were winding a bobbin. But remember, after steps 1 and 2 to wind a bobbin, we went back toward the back of our machine. We did 1 and 2, and now we're coming down the front face of our S3. Here's our number 3. Now, to ensure that our needle threader is going to work for us, we need to have our needle in the correct position. And right now, it is that perfect time to use this button, which is needle up, needle down. It's an arrow that looks hollow and an arrow that looks filled in. That is needle down, needle up. So when we touch it once, that needle goes down. When we touch it a second time, it comes up. So the take-up lever is in the perfect position, and the needle is in the perfect position for the needle threader. So we went around number 3, up on the right side, down on the left side. Here is a big hook, and there's a little hook at the top of the needle. Now time for our needle threader. You can see I have about 12 inches of thread here. That's okay. I'm not worried about wasting any thread. But what I like to do at this point is to lower my presser foot. And I lower my presser foot because now it gives me more room for my fingers when I'm using this needle threader. Your needle threader is this lever right here, right peeking out toward the front of you. When you pull this down, it actually comes down, and that little hook has gone into the eye of the needle, and it's staying there, as you can see. We're going to put our thread under this gray piece that is just to the left of the needle, and then we'll pull our thread to the right. And what you can easily do is slide your thread right up along your needle and up and to the right and up a little bit. So let me show you what I mean. So going to put our thread under that, and now take our thread and put it right where our needle is and pull it up slightly. You can see how my hand is angled there. And that's just going to help the needle get in that hook. And now when we pull this up, let that tail go as you let that needle threader up, and there you have that loop right there, and grab the loop, and there is your needle threaded. We'll raise our presser foot, put that thread underneath that presser foot, and now we're going to stitch a little bit. You'll notice that when you first turn your S3 on, it goes to straight stitch down the center of the foot. But you'll also notice down here 4 quick select buttons. So a quick select button, a very common stitch that we use a lot. There, of course, is straight stitch down the center of the foot, furthest to the left, a classic zigzag stitch, and then a buttonhole. So if you said, I want to make a buttonhole, you can go right there and it selects a stitch. We're just going to do some straight stitching first, so we can just go there. So we'll put this under here, lower our foot, and stitch. We can raise our foot and pivot and stitch. And when you're done stitching and you want to look at what you've stitched, here is that scissor button right there. Touch that. Pulls the threads to the back side, cuts them, and now we can look at our beautiful straight stitch. So let's do a buttonhole. And again, we can do a quick select buttonhole right here by simply touching that icon. If you look in the lid that is showing you all of your stitches, you actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttonholes, and also a bound buttonhole, a decorative kind of buttonhole with fabric. We're just going to select this one right here. It's telling us to use our buttonhole foot, and that's this right here. The beauty is that your buttonhole foot will measure the buttonhole for the button you want to use. You can see how this is repositionable. The slide part is repositionable. And this goes to the back of your machine while you're making your buttonhole. But this is where you can physically put in your button and it will size it to it. Now, I don't have a button in front of me, unfortunately. I apologize. But we can actually use a bobbin and just squeeze that on there so it's held there in place. We're going to remove our A foot that we were using a second ago. And of course, this is where your buttonholer is going to be snapped onto. So if you raise your presser foot lifter, you have extra height so you can get that buttonholer under there and attach it. Whenever I attach a different accessory foot, I do like to raise it again just to make sure that I've truly snapped it on. And now we're going to make a buttonhole. We have some fabric and some stabilizer. If you ever made that garment in high school home ec, you know that traditionally you use some type of stabilizer to support your project, your fabric for your technique. In garments, we traditionally use interfacing. On our decorative stitches, most often we're using what's called stabilizer. It stabilizes your fabric while you're doing your stitch, and some of them disappear with water, some tear away, just depends on the technique you're doing. Okay? So we'll sandwich our stabilizer in between two layers. Again, just maybe probably similar to what you've done if you've ever made a buttonhole in the past. Now the last thing we need to do before we start a buttonhole, and you can kind of see that icon on your screen, it looks like a lever with a buttonhole picture on it. That actually, behind your needle threader, is a lever that you will pull down for your buttonhole. What that is going to do, as it makes it as long as it needs to be, it will make it come back and complete just the size of the buttonhole that you want. So let's start stitching. This is the thread tail. You can hold this, you can let it go, let it just stitch along whatever you prefer. Beautiful buttonhole. Let's take a look at this. Okay. So if you watched when it was stitching a buttonhole, the first thing it did was a running stitch backward on the left-hand side. And once that lever that we pulled down hit the length that we needed, it kicked it back and started doing the satin stitch on the left-hand side. Then it went across to the right-hand side, did a running stitch back, did the bar tack, and then did the satin stitch on the right-hand side coming towards you. And then it did the front bar tack and automatically stopped when the buttonhole was complete. But the important part was that both sides, the left and the right side, as it was stitching, it did stitching coming towards you. And that gives you a beautiful, balanced buttonhole. It looks the same on both sides of your buttonhole. Then you simply open up this buttonhole. Be careful if you're using your seam ripper, which many times we've done that in the past. There are also buttonhole chisels available to cut that open. Just be careful if you're using that seam ripper not to slide past that end of your buttonhole. Some folks have actually put a straight pin in there that will kind of stop you. So find out what technique works best for you. But a beautiful, quick buttonhole because we used our quick select stitch. Okay, so when you're done making a buttonhole, make sure you push that button lever back up into the body of your S3. And so now, let's talk about some decorative stitches because you have a great collection of decorative stitches. And we will simply go to stitch number, we'll do number 61, okay? A little kind of scroll, actually kind of looks like a rope when you stitch it out. So how are we going to get to this stitch? As you look in the lid, there are words that say mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4, mode 5. So different modes for the different stitches that are in each section. How do we get to the different modes? On the face of your S3, you will see an icon that looks like a file folder that says the word mode. And each time you touch that, you will see this file folder on your screen change. And so that's taking you to the different modes, whether it's the alphabets or your decorative stitches. Once you're in the correct mode, all you simply have to do is type in the number of the stitch that you want. And we said we wanted stitch number 61, so we'll type in 61. It tells us 61 right there, and there's that stitch. So it's also telling us that we want to use the F foot. And in the past, many times we've just used the foot that's on our machine and we do not bother to change it. But it is important that we change the feet because there's a feature built into the foot that will make your stitching better. This is the standard foot. We call it the A foot. There's an A right in there in the belly of the foot. But the A foot is actually a perfectly flat foot. Perfect for your flat stitches, like a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. When you want to do a decorative stitch, it's going to use the F foot or ask for the F foot. There is a red triangle there that will help you position your stitch if you're wanting to follow a line on your fabric. But the important part is on the back side, there's a little tiny cutout, like a little channel on the back side that's there to accommodate the buildup of stitches and let it flow freely underneath your presser foot. So change your presser foot when it asks for it, okay? So we're going to snap on the F foot. Again, there's no right or wrong way, whether you just take the foot and snap it up or you lower the presser foot left lever. Both are the right way. So we have, once again, some stabilizer. We use the stabilizer in the button because there's so much stitching going on. You want to use stabilizer for your decorative stitches. And once again, there's a great collection of different stabilizers that wash away, tear away, are soft in your fabric, just depending on the project that you're working on. So stabilizer, we're going to lower our foot control. And actually this time, I'm going to take the foot control out. We lowered the presser foot. I'm going to take the foot control out. So we are now going to use our start-stop button. And we'll just stop that and cut the threads. And there's our decorative stitch. It's a pretty ropey kind of decorative stitch, isn't it? So we're going to go to another decorative stitch, number 87. It looks like a big heart and a little heart. Number 87. And once again, you can see it right on your screen. We're going to use the start-stop button once again because it's just fun to use and a nice consistent stitching speed, which I like when I'm doing decorative stitches. Again, our foot control is unplugged. Now I'm going to stop it for a minute because if you had taken a look at the first decorative stitch we did, it just stopped when we touched the start-stop button. But many times when we're doing a decorative stitch, we want a complete stitch, not half of a heart in this case. So how can we do that? And the answer is this icon that looks like a target button. We call it a tie-off button, which of course will tie off, knot your stitch. But in addition to knotting your stitch, it will also complete your stitch or complete your decorative stitch. So there's no need for you to try to guess when to stop. It will stop for you. And I find this using the start-stop button really helpful when I want to complete stitches because then I'm not concerned about it slowing down. It knows when it's done and it will stop when it's done with the stitch. So let's touch the start-stop button. While it is stitching, I'm randomly going to touch that target button and you'll see it's come to a complete stop by itself. Came to a complete stop. It is done and completed that stitch. And there's our fun little hearts that we've just stitched. One more thing we'll quickly do. We're going to go to mode 3 for a second, and we're going to type in a name, or we'll type in a word. Okay, we'll type in the word welcome. So mode 3 is our alphabet. It has upper and lower case. We'll just stick with our uppercase. And you'll see again numbers associated with each of those letters. Oh, you know what? We'll do hello instead. Okay? So capital H is number 18. So we're going to type 1, 8. You can see the letter H. And we're going to put this into memory, the M. Now we'll do lower E, so 41. Put that into memory. L is 48. We need another L. And then we will go to number 51 to put that into memory. So now we're ready to stitch out the word hello. lower the presser foot. We're still on the start-stop button, so let's use that. So it stitched out just that word and stopped. So this is perfect when you're wanting to make quilt labels. You can type in a long string of letters to say made by and then add your name. There's the word hello right there. So a great way to personalize any quilt you might be making, stitch on a label for clothing, and personalize it and add your own greeting to any project that you make. So experiment, explore your Janome Skyline S3. You will have many, many happy years of sewing on your Janome Skyline S3.